Hello, Sanbonani, Mugambachi, bonjour. This is the Victor Mukasa Show, and I welcome you to it with a special edition today. We are not usually here, but we have a special edition on the campaign that we have for LGBTQ plus refugees in Kakuma camp. You might say LGBT refugees everywhere because LGBT refugees are actually the minority of the minorities called refugees. But on this show today, we will be focusing on LGBTQ plus refugees in Kakuma camp. As you are all aware, we have a crisis over there. LGBT refugees continuously are facing attacks, homophobic and transphobic attacks from other refugees within the camp. As you know, these refugees are hailing from other countries in Africa that are highly homophobic, highly transphobic. The refugees, LGBT refugees in these camps have fled those countries. However, it's a melting pot. The camp is a melting pot of different nationalities from Africa coming with all their values and beliefs. Hence, the homophobia and transphobia there, which should not be surprise to anybody. On this show today, as you can see, what is tickering down there is something new that we are introducing, the Free Block 13 Week of Action, April 7th to 13th. And this is a move to stand in solidarity with LGBT refugees in Kakuma refugee camp. On this show, I'll be bringing a group of activists who have formed some kind of consortium. Basically, people coming together, organizations coming together and recognizing that there's a crisis in Kakuma camp when it comes to LGBTQ plus refugees. These organizations are human rights organizations. Some of them are African organizations, LGBT organizations, defenders from across the world. But on this show, we will have just a few representatives to introduce this week of action to us. I'm so honored to be hosting one of the most renowned African human rights defenders. That is somebody that most of you probably have met. Pumi, I hope that we can see your wonderful activist face here. Pumi Mtetwa is somebody I'm very fond of, is a comrade in the struggle, is somebody with whom we have traveled, gotten up the mountains and in the valleys and everywhere when it comes to the liberation of LGBTQ plus people in Africa, but not only in Africa, elsewhere in the world, as we will hear briefly from Pumi very shortly.
Pumi. Hello, Victor, and hello, everybody.
Just a few seconds of an introduction of you, not forgetting what you have done for us on the continent.
Hey, there's so much to do. It's hard to say what one has done, Vic. There's so much work to do.
Well, Pumi Mtetwa was the first African co-secretary general of the International Lesbian and Gay Association. And it is how we started coming down to having even Pan-Africa ILGA on the continent right now. Pumi Mtetwa has done so much, needs another show in Lest We Forget, but Pumi is an inspiration to most of us who were young activists then. Now we are big or old people with beards and gray hair. But then Pumi Mtetwa was somebody that we looked up to, and also somebody who contributed to the fight against apartheid in South Africa, if I'm not mistaken. I saved you from that introduction. We also have Ola, hailing from the United States of America, from the organization Black LGBTQIA Plus Migrant Project, co-director. Ola, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello, Victor. Hello, Pumi. Hello, everyone out there. Honored to be here.
Thank you, Ola. And you'll be talking more about how you're connected to this show very shortly. And somebody who is very familiar to us, Gilbert Kagarura, lead spokesperson of Block 13 and the campaign for the freedom, protection, safety of LGBTQ plus refugees. Welcome, Gilbert.
Thank you, Victor.
Okay, and so we dive in right now. And Pumi, I still owe you a little bit of introduction and how you're connected to this show, same as you, Ola. But just to start off, because we just have very limited time, Gilbert, before we get to understand what Free Block 13 Week of Action is, could you please give us a brief update of what is happening on the block in Kakuma camp generally, when it comes to the plight of LGBTQ plus refugees?
Thank you very much, Victor. It's an honor to be on the same platform with Pumi Tetwa and Ola Osaze. It's a huge honor. Thank you for your contribution, numerous contributions, the different struggles, and also for lending a hand to the struggle to free LGBTQ plus refugees in the hostile Kakuma camp, refugee camp. In Kakuma, really, I think tomorrow the ultimatum that was given to UNHCR comes to an end, which is a fortnight from the 24th of March.
Does that mean that there's going to be a great trek from the camp to somewhere?
If there is going to be a great trek, we don't know yet. Nothing has been communicated from the UNHCR or even from the Interior Ministry or from the Refugee Affairs Secretariat. None of them has come forward to say that this is what is happening. You can pack your bags or you can, nobody has said anything. Oh, please rest assured, we are going to resolve this. Of course, something in that direction would go a long way to, easing tensions and things like that. We hope that something will be communicated, of course, but nothing has come out yet. Now, that's for the general situation in the camp. But as per the situation of the LGBTQ plus refugees, Victor, nothing has changed really. We haven't been able to engage UNHCR since the 19th of Feb. They left with the promise of coming back. They haven't made good on their promise. Just like they haven't done much, anything else really, in terms of changing the situation. I think probably they will come forth or they'll take their time. I don't know, but they have not done much. Kakuma is still hostile. People are still in danger, and that is worrying. It continues to worry most of us and all of us. That the next minute we could see blood, we could see lives falling down. So something has to be done really, and we need some sort of urgency from UNHCR.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gilbert, for that update. And for those who want to understand the current predicament of LGBT refugees in Kakuma camp, please go back to the last show before this one that actually dives deep into that. The situation hasn't changed there. However, activists, advocates, human rights organizations are coming together because they realize the need to protect and to save lives. And I believe that is why there's a group or consortium of human rights defenders, activists, advocates, and organizations, coming together and saying we need to stand in solidarity with those who are facing these atrocities, those who are under attack because of their sexual orientation or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity and their allies. And I believe that is why we have Pumi Tetwa, that's why we have Ola from the US, and probably we start off with Ola. Ola, what Gilbert says and what they have been testifying about over the past few months shows that the situation is bad. We know that you have come strong to stand in solidarity with them. How do you connect to this campaign, and what is Free Block 13 Week of Action about, for starters?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question, and thank you for creating this space for us to talk about this, not just this issue, but the actions that we're collectively taking in support of Block 13. So, in terms of my personal connection to this issue, I should just start off with who I am. So again, I'm Ola. I am, a queer and trans Nigerian migrant living here in the United States, a former asylum seeker. So even though my migration journey is different from that of, Block 13 and the other LGBTQ folks at Kakuma, the context is the same. Similar reasons for, what forced me to leave Nigeria, similar reasons for what, led me to seek asylum here in the US. And from here in the US, seeing my homeland, Nigeria, cook up this, anti-LGBTQ bill that eventually became law, in 2014, I believe. So I'm very aware of what it means to be displaced, to be, forced to give up the only home, the only culture, the only community, the only physical space you've ever known, the place that defines you, that defines who you are at your heart, and the destabilization that happens. And then you add in what's happening to the queer and trans folks at Kakuma, the fact that, the amount of violence is rising and the intensity of violence is rising. And then you have these actors like the UNHCR, the Kenyan government, playing political football with the lives of Block 13 and the LGBTQ folks there. So you have multiple layers of violence happening. You have multiple layers of silence happening from other organizations, other NGOs who have power and influence and who could really make a huge impact on this issue. So this, on a very personal level, enrages me. It enrages me that we still live in this context that, especially for Black LGBTQ folks around the world, nowhere is safe for us. Even when we seek asylum, that is not even a safe situation. I mean, seeking asylum here in the US is a scary and contentious situation, right? So all of this is what brings me to this issue. And the week of action is especially important because it represents that Block 13 is not alone. It represents that there's, a global community that is flanking Block 13 and that will not stop until the UNHCR comes to the table to meet with Block 13 and address their demands and meets their demands. That is essentially what this action is about. And, for my organization, the Black LGBTQ Migrant Project, we essentially are about building the power of Black, queer, and trans people, migrants especially, to ensure the liberation of all Black people. For me, Block 13, the Free Block 13 campaign is about the liberation of all Black people. That's right. This week of action is about the liberation of all Black people. And what we have planned for these next 5 days are really about escalating our organizing, increasing the pressure, increasing the heat on UNHCR, and forcing them to the table, because that is what we need to do. We have no choice. So I'll stop there. And thank you again for having me.
Wonderful. And Ola, I would like to thank you for your commitment to the cause for Black LGBT, queer people all over the world. And as Ola says, this is not just about Block 13. This is a call for all of us to rise up for queer people. It's a call for all of us to rise up for LGBTQ plus people, a call for all of us to rise up for those minorities who are usually LGBTQ plus people within the minority groups. And I thank you, Ola, for your commitment to that. Pumi Mtetwa, I still owe you a brief introduction of where you are right now, where you come, where you come from. I know that you also represent an organization, but also how do you connect with this campaign and by the Free Block 13 week of action?
Thank you so much, Victor, for that, and thanks for hosting, the campaign on the eve of the Global Week of Action. And lovely to be with comrades Gilbert and Ola. The story of homophobia is not a story of Africa alone. It's a story that happens around the world. It's a question of remaining in the closet and affirming who you are in your entirety, in which sexual orientation and gender identity are only but one of what makes you complete. And so when Ola speaks about what it means to leave home and in search of refuge, you leave home, a physical space, but you leave culture, you leave a tradition, you leave a way of life that actually defines and possibly grounds you and provides you, ideally, a place of being safe, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about homophobia, even in South Africa, we really talk about this. It begins there. It begins about saying people who don't behave this way don't actually belong in this world. And if you do assert who you are and assert that you belong in this way, we will attempt to erase you, to eliminate you. And when I say eliminate, I mean in the worst form, right? In the worst form of like losing your life. And so a lot of people who are refugees and migrants that are in Kakuma right now have had to flee persecution, violence, erasure, disownership after they come out, right? And many of us know in history, I was involved in the Continental Campaign against the Bahati Bill way back then, you know? And these are like the consequences of what doesn't happen in country and what doesn't happen even as we have made some gains at an international level, whether it's at the UN broadly. You know, we have now a mechanism inside the United Nations that specializes on sexual orientation and gender identity, right? But where is it? We have had recognition around the entire human rights system of the UN is actually a recognition. And so when one leaves home and goes to a UN ground for safety, such as the ground that Kakuma is in, it's a ground that the UNHCR is in charge of, you know, in sort of refuge. And when that violence continue to happen in a space that is meant to provide refuge, of course, then we raise the concern. So I say all of this to partly also say why for jazz just associates this is important, because this is important in terms of self-determination, in terms of dignity, and in terms of actually fighting all the forms of violence that we see in society, but also the violence that we see inside the camp, the raping of the lesbians, the burning of gay men, and the just beating up of everybody. And for us as an organization, and I think important to say this also as a campaign, is that we hold the truths of the experiences of the people in Kakuma, who are the actual subjects that convene us to come and to hold the Global Week. And tomorrow, when we launch the campaign, of course, in the forefront will be the stories of people inside Kakuma who will share the atrocities that they have continued to endure, right? And why is that important? It is important because, one, I don't think if I had a choice to be a lesbian, I would have chosen that as if like it was, I choose ramen raisin ice cream or I choose vanilla. In the context where we live, we know what coming out means for each one of us. It's taking a high risk to your life. And to do it in the camp and to think like everything is manufactured or fabricated, it's an unfortunate thing of some of the noises that we are hearing around delegitimizing the experiences of the subjects that are found in Kakuma. So tomorrow it will be very, very important to start the week of action, inviting the entire world, inviting allies, people who are doubting, people who are not sure about how to show up, and people who want to actually understand, to just listen to the stories, you know, of who and what we are talking about. And most importantly, why it is important to stand side by side with that. So it is in that spirit that that as an organization and as activists, we come behind this week. And here, Jazz is not alone with BLMP. There is Triangle Project. There is the Coalition of African Lesbians. There is the Global Interfaith Network. Who am I forgetting? And many Pan-Africa ILGA. And there are many activists who are not necessarily linked to any organization who have been part of this journey, whether it was before 2020. This thing is not new. Yeah. And now since 2020, we are continuing to journey with us, because we understand that eliminating the violence, the discrimination, the exclusion that refugees in Kakuma camp are experiencing is, as Ola says, a liberation to particularly every Black person everywhere, but specifically in this continent.
Wow, thank you so much, Pumi. That is powerful, and you owe me nothing. But from what you have said, I think that I'm getting excited to know exactly what to expect in the week of action. What are the specific actions we might see happening, and on which days? And Ola, I don't know if you can take us through this, and Pumi, to please take us through that.
Yes. So we have 5 days, wonderful days of some fierce action, mostly in the digital space. So starting tomorrow, which is Wednesday the 7th, we're really going to start the week of action with uplifting Block 13. Really circulating the stories of some members of Block 13 in terms of what they've experienced at the camp, the lack of the lack of any kind of action on the part of UNHCR, the state violence that they've experienced either at the hands of the police or other kind of state actors, acting on the camp. So, so these stories, these videos are going to be really powerful and really important for, folks out there to, again, as Pumi said, watch, listen, absorb what folks are sharing, and let that mobilize you to take, really definitive action on their behalf. So it starts off with uplifting those stories. The next day, we're going to take it to the, to the Twitter and Facebook world and focus on UNHCR. Why haven't they done anything? Why are they trying to discredit Block 13? Why are they putting out this false narrative that these LGBTQ folks who are under attack are to blame for the attack? So we're gonna, have a tweet storm and a Facebook storm on Thursday, focused on various UNHCR folks. Fatia Abdallah, the head of the Kenya branch, and Filippo Grandi, the head of the entire thing, as well as some special rapporteurs and so forth. On Friday, we're going to continue the messaging again with some beautiful images featuring some members of this international coalition that's working with Block 13, sharing some powerful quotes. Again, this is about messaging. This is about flooding the digital space with the stories of Block 13, the demands, and the messages.
What kind of demands do we have?
I'm sorry?
What are the demands that will be featured?
The demands are, what Block 13 is calling for is for UNHCR to relocate them to Nairobi, where they will feel safer and will have access to resources that will, to life-saving resources. That is one key demand for this week of action. Other demands, on the way to that big demand is for UNHCR to actually come to the table and meet with Block 13 to start talking about what their experiences are and what they need. So can I pass it to you, Pumi, to talk about Monday and Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. If I may, to just underline one thing. The struggles across the continent are so interconnected. It is not by accident that the Global Week starts on the day in which we will be remembering the Rwandan genocide, right? That caused massive pain, displacements, We have so many comrades who are organizing with us and who are colleagues who are actually organizing, continuing to organize in solidarity with our Global Week of Action, but broadly, around Kakuma Block 13, because they remember what it's like to be an asylum seeker. They remember what the genocide did to their homes and their experiences. So it is not by accident that this is coming out. We are launching this both as a reminder to all of us not to forget that, but also as to say we are at the risk of repeating history by omitting the things that we can avoid. So on Monday, really we want to focus on what it means today to be a human rights organization, to be a human rights defender, to be a caring, or saying you are a caring organization, but outside of some of the struggles that are often termed on the fence, the struggles of us who are on the fence. And it's often LGBTIQ people, sex workers, people living with HIV and AIDS that are always on the fence, because we represent not the cozy struggles sometimes, right? We are the ones who actually have to be eliminated, according to former African leaders who have fueled the hatred that we see in Africa. And unfortunately, sometimes we have the contradictions amongst some of the organizations. If the contradictions are not there, there is always a challenge in relation to how do I want to show up as an organization that defends human rights but not show up fully. So quiet diplomacy, backroom diplomacy, and so on. So we want to challenge ourselves as such organizations, given our missions and our visions of a society that we want to build. We want to challenge every human rights progressive organizations, whether they are religious or theologians, whether they are aid organizations, or whether they defend a rights work across the world, to actually come and join the struggle. We will, of course, be releasing a beautiful love letter that we have written to all of us, to be able to talk about what it means to live truth to the missions and vision of our organizations. In my language, not to talk left, but walk right. So that is what we will be focusing on Thursday, calling organizations to stand in solidarity with Block 13 and all LGBTI and other refugees across the continent and elsewhere. Then we will close on Tuesday, the 13th. And our closure really also remembers Aneste Mwere. If you don't know Aneste Mwere hung himself last year in Kakuma Camp Block 13. A gay person who hung himself inside the camp because it was just too unbearable for him to continue to live. Also a suicide that did not necessarily gain, if you look at the statements that were issued by UNHCR around that time, saying don't talk too much about this issue, don't take pictures, and don't say anything, basically. It also shows a lack of acknowledgement of the atrocities that continue to happen inside the camp. So what we are saying in remembering Aneste is that we don't want another suicide. We don't want another child killed in the camp. We don't want other bodies burnt, and we don't want anyone raped or murdered and stabbed or suffering any form of violence inside the camp. And we don't want anyone being pushed to the edge to actually be on the brink of thinking their lives are not worth it. And so as we will close there, we will come back again. Thank you, Victor, for hosting us today. We will come back and we will reflect on the week of organizing. But we will be putting a very critical question, a question that is so important to all of us across the world, as to why are we criminals for just being who we are? Why are we being criminalized for the self-determination and the right to love who we choose to love? Why are we even being further criminalized when we are saying we are unsafe and we want protection and we want to be safe in this world? So that is, those would be the last 2 weeks, but most importantly, we do want people to show solidarity. We will be, I think, on the 3rd day making calls for people to make placards, take selfies, change your picture to actually show us that you're standing with Block 13. You know, we want people to show the support both in words and in actions. There is so much to do, inside Block 13, in the UN spaces, in our own organizations, on this continent, but across the world, to actually change the situations of LGBTI people so that there is no need to seek asylum, so that we create the safe spaces and truly give meaning to them, to the word that is home, to truly give deep meaning to what is home. So I will end there. I think that's, unless I left something, that's it.
Well, at least we have a better understanding of what is happening starting tomorrow. Gilbert, what is the feel of this at Block 13 among LGBTQ plus refugees in Kakuma camp? What should we expect also from you directly?
You know, this is a very, very important moment in the lives of the LGBTQ plus refugees on Block 13, and not just Block 13 actually, in the entire Kakuma refugee camp. There has been a lot of don't say this, don't say that, as it was portrayed, as you have actually correctly pointed out, Pumi, in the statements that followed the suicide of Ernest Mero. Don't say this, don't touch that, don't say that. That is the kind of life that we have lived in Kakuma. So when we have voices that are standing strong and firm to say this is wrong, you don't know what that means to us. It means the entire world. We have suffered in silence, in darkness for far too long. A situation that we are addressing should not have a reason in the first place. Kakuma had already been proven hostile. There should not have been refugees of LGBTQI plus profile in Kakuma. So this having an opportunity of being corrected, not just for our generation, but even for generations that might come after us, means a whole lot of new world. It promises hope. I think that even those that were considering their lives worthless, they begin to see that, yes, the world actually is aware. They feel the sense of love and care. And this is something that has been sadly missing in our lives in these refugee camps. We are very, very grateful to the international solidarity that has taken this step, very, very important step in the lives of the LGBTQ refugees. However, I would like to say that what the consortium has proposed is not all that can be done. If you want, for example, to go out on the street and demonstrate, please go ahead and do that.
Absolutely.
If you want to make a call, if you want to put out a banner and say, look, UNHCR, these are lives too, it's fine. It conveys a message, and we deeply appreciate that. Thank you, comrades.
We hold no patents to that. We actually encourage people to do things and show solidarity and post and tag. What are those things called? Hashtags.
And in South Africa, do we encourage some toy?
Absolutely.
That's right. That's right.
Well, comrades, I really thank you so much for this. Thank you for standing with Block 13. Block 13, we hear you. We hear your stories. We are ready to stand behind you just to save humanity for you humans. And as human rights defenders and advocates, we are standing and believe in protection for everybody, for their lives and property. For those organizations that were not able to show up, a big shout out to Triangle Project, to the Coalition of African Lesbians, to Global Interfaith Network, to Pan-Africa, ILGA, to what is that organizations in Europe, Gilbert?
We have Filia.
Filia in
we have Million Women Rise.
Million Women Rise in the UK.
We have a Center for Minority Rights and Strategic Litigation
in Kenya.
In Kenya.
PEMA, Kenya.
Yes.
and many
We
more.
also,
That
yes,
are
Kenya
coming.
Human Rights Commission.
Thank you very much. Yes, to the Kenya Human Rights Commission for also pushing for freedom of everybody. Friends, you are amazing, and we will be featuring whatever is coming on over during this week on the Victor Mukasa Show, and we will also be closing this campaign from the Victor Mukasa Show. So please show up again on the 12th as we close the campaign that will just be beginning a campaign.
The 13th, Menir
13th.
Mukasa. The
Oh, the
13th.
13th. Right. Well, I thank you all. I know that as organizations, you have other work that you're taking care of. I will let you go, and we will be back here on the 13th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, comrades. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
You'll have to stay here, Gilbert, but I'll let you go. Block 13, wherever you are. Shout out to you all LGBT individuals in and families in Kakuma camp, in Nairobi, and in other camps elsewhere in the world. We hold you close to our hearts. Please share this video and remember to subscribe to the Victor Mukasa Show on YouTube, because sometimes we are broadcasting live, like today, we are broadcasting live from there. Also, like the Facebook page for the Victor Mukasa Show, as at some point we will have to migrate from my profile page to the Victor Mukasa Show page. Thank you very much. Aluta continua.